All right, so we all know that feeling, right? You're trying to like ditch a bad habit or like start a good one, and it just feels like you're getting nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you're just stuck. But today on the deep dive, we're going to look at some seriously cool ideas about habits, and they might just change your whole perspective on this.
I love that. Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about the stuff we're diving into today?
Yeah.
It challenges this whole idea that struggling with habits means something's wrong with you.
Right.
Like you're not disciplined enough or whatever. It's more about understanding how habits actually work.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, what's the secret sauce?
Well, one of the big things is this concept of the plateau of latent potential.
Plateau of latent potential. Okay, that sounds a bit intimidating, but I'm all ears. Break it down for us.
Think of it like this. You're trying to melt an ice cube.
Right, okay, I'm with you.
And it's sitting there at, say, 25 degrees. You start applying heat. The temperature goes up. Maybe it hits 31 degrees. But it still looks like a darn ice cube.
Ugh, I know that feeling. You're putting in all this effort, but nothing seems to be changing on the surface. It's frustrating.
Exactly. And it's easy to think, what's the point? I'm not getting anywhere. But here's the thing. All that energy you're putting in isn't disappearing. It's being stored. It's like it's building up beneath the surface. Then boom, you hit that magic 72 degrees, and suddenly the whole thing melts.
Okay, so it's like those overnight successes we often hear about. They're rarely overnight, right? There's usually a ton of groundwork that's been laid before that breakthrough moment.
Exactly. It's the work you put in when it feels like nothing's happening that actually sets you up for those big leaps forward. So the key takeaway here is to trust the process, even when you don't see those immediate visible results.
So how do we actually apply this to breaking bad habits and building good ones?
One of the most powerful ideas our sources highlight is that habits are deeply tied to our identity, to our fundamental beliefs about who we are.
Okay, so it's not just about making a to-do list and hoping for the best. It's about looking at those deeper beliefs that are driving our behaviors.
Exactly. It's like, if you want to be someone who saves money, but you still see yourself as someone who enjoys spending impulsively, well, those beliefs are going to clash.
You're going to be constantly battling yourself.
Right. Those old patterns will keep pulling you back, even if you have the best intentions.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we start to shift those deep-seated beliefs about ourselves?
Our sources suggest thinking about every action as a kind of vote for the person you want to become.
I like that. It's not about some massive personality overhaul overnight. It's about those small, consistent actions that start to build evidence for a new identity.
Precisely. If you want to be a writer, start by writing a sentence a day. If you want to be a musician, pick up your instrument for 5 minutes. Each of those small actions is a vote for that identity.
So those small steps, those little votes you cast, they accumulate over time.
And they start to shift how you see yourself. You start to think, hey, maybe I am someone who can write. Or maybe I am someone who's disciplined. And the more you embody that identity, the more natural those behaviors become. It's a really powerful cycle.
It's like you're not just trying to do something different, you're trying to become someone different.
Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge that setbacks are a part of the process. You're going to have days where you indulge in those old habits, where you cast a vote for that old identity.
Right, you're not going to be perfect.
But the key is not to let those slip-ups derail your progress. You just got to keep focusing on those small wins, on casting those votes in the right direction consistently over time.
So it's like you said before, trust the process. Even if you have a few stumbles along the way, the overall direction is what matters. Now, how about a concrete plan of action? How do we actually put this into practice? Our sources provide a pretty clear two-step process for identity change.
First, you got to decide who you want to be. Like, really get clear on that. What are your values? What do you stand for? What kind of person do you want to show up as in the world?
Okay, so it's about taking that time for self-reflection, really figuring out who you want to be.
Yeah, it's like setting your internal compass. And then step 2 is all about proving it to yourself with small wins. Don't just declare it, embody it. Start taking those small actions that align with that desired identity.
So it's not enough to say, I'm going to be a healthy person. You actually have to start making those healthy choices step by step.
Right. And remember, your identity isn't fixed. You have the power to choose who you want to become in every moment. It's an ongoing process of shaping yourself through the habits you cultivate.
Okay, I love that. So we've got the foundation understanding that habits are tied to identity. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of how habits actually work. Our sources break it down into what they call the 4 stages of habit.
Right, and this is where things get really interesting. Every habit, whether it's a good one or a bad one, follows this same four-step pattern. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay, so it's like a little loop that our brains go through. Let's unpack each of those stages.
The first stage is the cue. This is what triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It's like a signal that says, hey, a reward might be coming soon. For our ancestors, cues were things like seeing a source of food or sensing danger.
Right, those basic survival cues.
But nowadays, our cues are often more complex. They could be anything from the smell of freshly baked cookies to the notification sound on our phones.
So it's like our brains are always scanning our environment for those little hints that something good or bad might be on its way.
Exactly. And once the cue is recognized, it triggers the second stage, which is the craving. This is the motivational force behind every habit. It's that feeling of desire, that urge to change your current state.
So if the cue is like the alarm bell, the craving is the actual feeling of, ooh, I want that cookie.
Precisely. It's the anticipation of the reward that drives our actions. Then comes the response, which is the actual habit itself.
So in the cookie example, the response would be reaching for the cookie and taking a bite.
Exactly. And whether or not you carry out that response depends on a couple of things.
Yeah.
Your ability to do it. Can you actually reach the cookie jar? And how much friction there is.
Right. If the cookie jar is on the top shelf and you need a ladder to reach it, you might be less likely to go through the effort.
Exactly. And finally, we get to the reward. This is the payoff, the thing that satisfies the craving and teaches your brain whether the whole sequence was worth repeating.
So in the cookie example, the reward would be that delicious taste and the feeling of satisfaction you get from eating it.
Right. And your brain is constantly evaluating these rewards, figuring out which actions lead to pleasurable outcomes and which ones don't. It's like a little feedback loop that shapes your future behavior. If the reward is strong enough, your brain will be more likely to repeat that sequence next time it encounters the cue.
So, to recap, the cue triggers the craving motivates the response, and the reward reinforces the entire cycle. If any of those elements are missing or weak, the habit won't form or won't stick.
Exactly. Now here's where it gets even more fascinating. With enough repetition, this whole process becomes automatic. You start picking up on those cues and going through the loop without even consciously thinking about it.
It's like driving a car. At first, you have to think about every step, pressing the gas, checking your mirrors, turning the wheel. But after a while, it becomes second nature. You can practically do it on autopilot.
And that's great for efficiency, but it can also make it hard to change those unwanted habits. We're so used to doing things a certain way that we don't even realize we're doing them.
It's like those mindless snacking habits. You're not even really hungry, but you find yourself reaching for the chips just out of habit.
Right. So the first step in making any lasting change is becoming aware of your current habits. Our sources mention a couple of techniques for this, like pointing and calling, where you literally say out loud what you're doing as you're doing it.
That sounds a bit strange, but I can see how it would force you to pay attention.
And there's the habit scorecard, where you list out all your daily routines and then evaluate whether each one is a good habit, a bad habit, or a neutral habit.
Okay, so awareness is the foundation. But how do we actually start building those good habits? That's where the 4 laws of behavior change come in.
Exactly. And the first law is all about making good habits obvious. One of the most powerful things you can do is create what's called an implementation intention.
Okay, I remember reading about this in the research you shared. It's basically a specific plan for when and where you're going to perform the habit. Like, I will go for a 20-minute run tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. in the park.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that just having that specific plan dramatically increase people's likelihood of actually following through. It's about turning those vague intentions into concrete actions.
It's like instead of just saying, I'll eat healthier, you say, I will pack a salad for lunch tomorrow and eat it at my desk at noon.
Right. And building on this idea of specific cues, there's another technique called habit stacking. This involves linking a new habit you want to build to an existing habit you already do regularly.
So it's like using the momentum of an established routine to trigger the new one. For example, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will meditate for 5 minutes.
Exactly. You're basically hitching your new habit to the train of an old one. And you can even create larger stacks by chaining several habits together.
Oh, I like that. So it becomes like a positive domino effect. You start with one small action and it sets off a chain reaction of good habits.
Right. And another really important factor in making good habits obvious is your environment.
Our surroundings have a huge impact on our behavior, don't they?
Absolutely. Our brains are wired to take the path of least resistance. If unhealthy snacks are always within easy reach, you're more likely to grab them.
It's about making the desired behaviors the easy default option.
Exactly. So design your environment to support your goals. Keep healthy snacks visible, put your workout clothes where you'll see them, have a book you want to read next to your bed.
And the flip side is making those bad habits less accessible.
Right. Put your phone in another room when you need to focus. Delete those distracting apps. Avoid walking down the snack aisle at the grocery store.
Our sources also talk about the power of changing your environment entirely to break those ingrained patterns.
Yeah, like in that study with the soldiers returning from Vietnam who had developed heroin addictions. When they came back to a completely different environment, most of them were able to quit almost immediately.
It's like hitting the reset button. You remove yourself from those familiar triggers and create a fresh start.
And here's a really important point. People who seem to have incredible self-control often just have really good habit systems in place. They've structured their lives to make the right choices the easy choices.
They've taken the willpower out of the equation.
Exactly. All right, so that's the first law. Make it obvious. The second law is all about making those good habits attractive.
Okay, so how do we make those things we should be doing things we actually want to do?
Our brains are wired to seek out pleasure and avoid pain. So we need to tap into that reward system to make good habits more appealing.
Our sources talk about this idea of temptation bundling.
Yes, temptation bundling is a great way to leverage the power of immediate gratification. It involves linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
So, for example, after I finish my workout, I'll watch an episode of my favorite show, Want. You're essentially using the thing you enjoy to motivate you to do the thing you might not be as thrilled about.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of your social environment. We tend to adopt the habits of the people around us, especially those we admire or want to be like.
Right. If you surround yourself with people who value health and fitness, you're more likely to adopt those habits yourself.
And you can also reframe how you think about certain habits to make them more appealing. Instead of seeing exercise as a chore, see it as an opportunity to improve your health and energy levels.
It's like I get to move my body and feel good rather than I have to go to the gym.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift in mindset, but it can make a big difference. All right, law 2, make it attractive. Law 3 is all about making good habits easy.
Okay, so how do we reduce friction and make those good behaviors as effortless as possible?
Well, first off, remember that consistency is key. Especially when you're starting out, don't aim for perfection, aim for repetition.
It's about showing up and doing the thing, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Exactly. The more you repeat a behavior, the easier it becomes. You're literally wiring those neural pathways in your brain.
And when it comes to making things easy, environment is key again.
Absolutely. Design your surroundings to minimize friction for good habits and maximize friction for bad ones.
So, prepare healthy meals in advance. Keep your workout gear ready to go. Put your phone in another room when you need to focus.
And there's this great little rule called the 2-minute rule. The idea is to scale down your new habit to something that takes less than 2 minutes to do.
So instead of trying to write a whole chapter of your book, just commit to writing one paragraph.
Exactly. It's about making that initial step so ridiculously easy that you can't say no. Once you've started, you often find that you keep going.
It's like overcoming that initial inertia. And then our sources also talk about commitment devices as a way to lock in good behaviors and make it harder to slip up.
Yeah, commitment devices are basically choices you make in the present that control your actions in the future. Like, if you want to save more money, you could set up automatic transfers to your savings account.
Or if you want to limit your screen time, you could use an app that blocks certain websites during specific hours.
Right. You're essentially removing the option to make the bad choice in the moment.
And then there's the ultimate friction reducer, automation.
Yes. Automation is like the holy grail of habit formation. It's about using technology or setting up systems that make good habits the default.
Like having your bills paid automatically so you don't have to think about it.
Exactly. Or using a meal delivery service that sends you healthy food so you don't have to cook every night.
Of course, as our sources point out, technology can also make it super easy to indulge in bad habits. Think about those endlessly scrolling social media feeds and streaming services that autoplay the next episode.
Which is why being mindful of how we use technology is so crucial.
Right, maybe setting limits on those apps or even just logging out so you have to make a conscious choice to log back in.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy. Now, the fourth and final law is all about making those good habits satisfying.
And this gets to the heart of why so many people struggle with building those long-term consistent habits, right?
Absolutely. Our brains are wired to prioritize immediate rewards. But the benefits of many good habits are delayed, while the rewards of bad habits are often instant.
So it's about finding ways to bridge that gap and make those good habits feel rewarding in the here and now.
Right. The key principle here is what's called the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided.
Okay, so how do we apply this? How do we make good habits feel more satisfying in the moment?
One way is to simply give yourself a small reward right after you complete the habit. It doesn't have to be anything major, just something you enjoy.
Like if you're trying to build a writing habit, maybe you reward yourself with a cup of coffee after you finish your writing session.
Exactly. And for bad habits, the reward can often be the feeling of relief or the progress you're making toward a larger goal.
Like if you're trying to quit smoking, the reward could be knowing that you're improving your health and saving money.
And one of the most effective ways to make progress feel satisfying is through habit tracking.
Right, this is something that comes up a lot in the material we looked at. It's basically just the act of visually recording whether you've completed your habit each day.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as putting a check mark on a calendar or using a habit tracking app.
And tracking is so powerful because it provides that visual evidence of your progress. It's like you're building a chain of success.
Right. It also acts as a visual reminder. It can be motivating to keep your streak going, and it just feels good to mark off another successful day.
But our sources also warn about something called Goodhart's Law. What is that, and why is it relevant here?
Goodhart's law basically says that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Okay, so in the context of habits, it means you need to be careful not to get so caught up in tracking the numbers that you lose sight of the actual purpose behind the habit.
Exactly. Don't let the tracking become the goal itself.
Right.
Speaking of staying on track, two helpful rules to keep in mind are never miss twice and don't break the chain.
Okay, never miss twice makes sense. It's about getting right back on track if you have a slip up. And don't break the chain is all about maintaining that visual streak of success.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of accountability. Having someone who knows about your goals and can offer support can be incredibly helpful.
Our sources even talk about creating habit contracts where you make a formal agreement with someone and outline the consequences if you don't follow through.
Yeah, that can be a really effective way to add some external motivation. So that covers the 4 laws of behavior change. But where does that deeper intrinsic motivation come from? How do we find that drive to keep going even when things get tough?
That's a great question. Our sources emphasize the importance of aligning your habits with your core values and making them a part of who you see yourself to be.
Right, it's about that identity we talked about earlier. When your habits are in sync with your deepest values, it's less about forcing yourself to do something and more about simply being who you are.
And it's also worth acknowledging that we all have different natural inclinations. Some habits might come more easily to you than others.
Right, our genetics and personality traits can definitely play a role. And there's also this idea of the explore-exploit trade-off.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When you're starting out with something new, there's often a period of exploration where you're trying different things to see what fits. And once you find something that clicks, that's when you can start to really exploit it and get those results.
That makes sense. It's like trying different hobbies until you find one that really sparks your passion.
Exactly. And while luck can definitely play a role, you can also create your own opportunities by combining your skills and interests in a unique way. Like the creator of Dilbert did, he combined his business experience with his love of drawing to create something truly original.
Our sources also make a point of acknowledging that even when you get good at something, there will be times when you just don't feel motivated.
Yeah, even the most successful people experience those slumps, but they find ways to show up anyway. It's that consistency, even when it's not glamorous, that's key.
And using variable rewards can help to keep things interesting.
Right, like adding some variety to your workouts or rewarding yourself in unexpected ways. And the Goldilocks rule is also helpful here, finding that sweet spot of challenge that keeps you engaged without overwhelming you.
So it's about finding ways to keep that spark alive.
Absolutely. Now, for those who really want to level up their habit game, our sources talk about the power of reflection and review.
Like keeping a habits journal where you track your progress and reflect on what's working and what's not.
Right. Or using a system like the Career Best Effort program that Pat Riley used with the Lakers, where players tracked their progress and held each other accountable.
It's about becoming a student of your own behavior and constantly looking for ways to improve.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And as we wrap up, it's worth remembering that while we often chase happiness, happiness itself can be fleeting.
right. It's like that feeling of excitement when you start something new. It eventually fades, and you need to find new sources of motivation.
And that's where the feeling of desire comes in. Desire is what initiates action, while pleasure is what sustains it.
So it's about finding those things that truly light you up, those things that you're genuinely drawn to, and building habits around those.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of habits. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the importance of identity-based habits to the 4 laws of behavior change, to the power of understanding how our brains work.
I hope you found it as insightful as I have.
If you take away just one thing from our conversation today, I hope it's this. Small changes, consistently applied, can lead to incredible results.
Choose one small positive habit you want to build and start with just one tiny step today.
And here's a little challenge for you. Think about one identity you truly want to strengthen in your life. What is one small vote you can cast today that will move you in that direction?
I love that. A small vote for a big change.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.